Welcome back, Levelin Up Nation. It is your host, Brigham Blackham. I'm your success strategist. And today we have a phenomenal guest, Melissa Reaves. Now, she is someone that talks about story fruition. So instead of me giving her background, I want to have her have the opportunity to say where this entire idea came from, how she got into this, why she's so passionate about it, and she's going to do it in the form of a story. So I'm so grateful to have her on today. Melissa, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning. So yeah, tell us your background and what is Story Fruition? What is your Story Fruition?
Okay. Well, thank you first off for having me here. I appreciate it. This is going to be really fun. So let's see. So as a child, I knew that I was funny at 6, and then I started acting at 9. And so every time I would go to a little school audition, I would always land the lead or at least a significant part. So everyone knew that Missy, that's who I grew up as, had some talent. I don't even know what to do with it. That was my mother. She always had this accent from Oklahoma, and but my father was like, that's a kind of a hobby. What are you going to major in? And I ended up getting into the University of Michigan through the musical theater program. But my father was like, yeah, that's a hobby. So I ended up creating this degree. I kind of made it up along the way. I floated around trying to find my passions, and I ended up taking a variety of classes. And at the time, I did it just because I liked them. I didn't want to commit to one passion, right? So I had social psychology, I had marketing, I loved journalism, and I kept acting alive. And I graduated with this general studies degree. Well, as I became an adult, I had a real career. I was in sales, I was in marketing, I went into advertising technology, I was in startups. And the reason why I was good in startups was I was able to take my acting skills and create vision stories. I could get any buyer that I was talking to see their technology working for them. So I would teach them and so the user goes onto the website and we're taking notes as to what they're paying attention to. And then when they leave your site, we can serve a relevant ad for them. This is early days of behavioral targeting, but to them it was new. They're like, you can what? And so I was able to constantly bring people into the future with vision stories. All right. It was fun. It was great. I was killing it. It was lovely. I mean, I even got as high up as to be working at Oracle in their marketing technology. So it was great. But after a while, it got really tiring. We were no longer just the shiny penny. There was a lot going on. And I think that part of me of, I'm always looking for something new needs to happen. And so I was starting to feel kind of burnt out from it. And this is literally 17 years of being in it. It's not like 2 years. Okay.
Yeah.
And I was, I had been drawn to the Seattle University's business plan competition. I'm standing in the audience and I'm listening to these students, and they're coming forward and they're all fighting for $10,000, and they're going to show the world how we're going to change it with our idea. And every single student did it the typical way that you see when people are presenting as an investor presentation. They started with numbers. They were like 83% of all people, blah, 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 right? 92%. And they were just doing numbers. And as I'm sitting there in the audience, it was like a lightning bolt came shooting down into my head. And I literally punched the arm of the woman who was the director. We had kind of become instant friends. And I'm like, oh my God, I think I can help. I think I can. What if instead of them doing numbers, which aren't very emotional, we turn the problem into a story, with a person having the problem. And that way we can see it and we'd care about it. And she's like, that's kind of a good idea. Let's give it a shot next year. And so she did. And they were my test dummies. I was test driving on them. And it was a hit. I mean, every single student came up and they started doing stories instead of numbers. And I have been, since that time, coaching them for the last 7 years at Seattle U. In fact, tomorrow is their business plan competition.
Nice.
They're going to be shooting for 20 grand. And they were all trained in the mind movie method to do this. And it grew. I mean, it kept growing. It's like, it wasn't just me going, I'm going to teach people how to be storytellers in business. It ended up, as I was on my journey, just like when I was at Michigan, I followed it. I felt like I was a little leaf floating in a creek, and every time I would hear the next step and I would answer it. And so that turned into me coaching at Seattle U, to finding my first clients, helping them with their investor decks. And my first client landed $35 million in his Series A. And then I was like, I did not charge him enough. I did not. But then I started doing workshops, and I started teaching people my method. And we'll get into that from a book, because then I was like, I have to write a book. So then I wrote a book. And now it's becoming a technology next step. So that's how I got here. It has been an incredible journey that started really when I was 9, and I realized I was an actor and that acting mattered, and it wasn't a hobby, Daddy. It was actually something that can be used in business. And so, when I left the corporate world and started this 6 years ago, I've never looked back. I've never looked back, because I now know that all of my intrinsic talents, so sales, marketing, communications, and acting, all matter. They all matter. And so that's when Story Fruition just became my little baby. And I've been raising it ever since.
That's so amazing. Well, I am so impressed with not only what you've done to gather all these different skills, but how you've packaged it in such a meaningful way. So I've read your book, I've gone through this mind movie method, and I think it's really something that every single person needs to understand. When you are speaking a story, how do you have your audience see it? I love the vernacular of saying a vision story. Tell us a little bit how you came up with the mind movie method. I want to hear like the peek behind the curtain kind of idea. How did you find these patterns? Because there's some really beautiful patterns that you bring up, and just great life skills as far as a storyteller that you've revealed in that book. So tell us your behind the scenes.
Thank you. Yeah. So the book is called The Storyteller's Mind Movie. And during the pandemic, when we were all locked in our homes, because Mother Nature was like, think about what you did, Missy, we were in quarantine. I had already started studying the art form of storytelling with my dear friend, Kent Whipple. And he's brilliant. He was my first storytelling mentor. And he even looked at me after I did my first story that ended up landing on a podcast, a huge podcast. And he's like, I think you found your medium. Because I was an improv comedy, and I still am an improv comedy actor, but I also, regular actor too. And I didn't want to do stand-up. That wasn't something I wanted to do. But storytelling, which it's based in truth. So you get up there and you tell a personal story. So, there's something called The Moth, and it's the oldest storytelling show. It's on NPR. They have shows all across the world, and people get up there and they tell a story based on the theme for 5 minutes. And, you might win. The voters, the audience votes. And if you win, you go on, and it's great. So he taught me storytelling. And then being an improviser, there is something called crow, which is what we do when we're creating stories on the fly. We are using this element. So it's characters, relationships, objective, and where. And what that means is that every story has characters, and every story that you're telling in the world of your own life has characters. You're in it, and there's other people in it. Okay. And so most people, and these characters have relationships, right? So when you first meet someone, I want to know, were you friends? Was it adversarial? What was it like? Okay. And what's the objective of your story? Like, what are the stakes? What's involved here? Is it like, is it life or death? Health or sickness, rich or poor? What are the stakes? All right, guys, every story, a good story has stakes. Anecdotes don't really have stakes as much. Stories have stakes. And then the where is huge. So the where is, where were you in life? How old were you? Where were you spiritually or mentally? Were you depressed? Were you happy? And where were you physically? And so this is all going on in an improv scene, believe it or not. We're doing this on the fly. But I realized, why am I not taking this and teaching this to the business world? Because the business world tends to be untrained in this skill set. Most of my clients are actually AI. They're like engineers. They've been STEM based. They know numbers backwards and forwards. And so working with that part of their brain, which is the neocortex, is easy. Like they can crunch a number. I work with data analytics MBA students because they're buff in the neocortex. But the limbic system part of our brain is where we see things, and it's very emotional. And so what we want to do is we want to just train that muscle. We want to get those people out of the neocortex gym a little bit and move them over into the limbic system and teach them, like, okay, instead of saying, when we were working at Microsoft, they were very upset with us at first. What do you see when I say that?
Not much. What does Microsoft even look like?
Right. So people will say, well, I see the logo.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. How about this? When we first walked into Karen's office, she was the senior vice president of Microsoft's Azure division, and her office could not be cleaner and more pristine. The only thing you could see behind her desk was her awards that she had won. And when we walked in, she said, "Sit down." That's a storyteller's mind movie. Right. And so that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to teach someone to go from vague and kind of bland and that we can't see it, because your audience is going to respond accordingly. If you're bland, they're just going to go, But if you're vivid, they're going to be like, right. And that's the difference. And the good news is this is trainable. And it's fun. It's really fun.
So trainable. You think about this, like I've had this framework of Crow since I was in middle school. I'd never heard anyone else use it over and over. Like I had, until I read your book. I was like, I'm not alone. And it's so funny because anytime you have a great framework like that, it has legs. And you're like, I shared this in every single acting class that I ever taught, because I taught for 7 years, and I absolutely loved connecting with these theater kids that you share that skill set and they can use it in any other class when they're using a story. Every single conversation that you have, you can say, well, what's the character here? What's the relationship? What's the objective? Where are we? And it gives a very safe way to immediately step into that visual, into the circumstances that are given. One of the things that I loved doing, this was one of my favorite exercises. You guys can use this. This is, anybody can do this. Was the idea of knocking on a door, and you have someone knock on the door and then answer the door. Have you ever done that exercise, Melissa? It was a Crow exercise, right? It's how fast can you establish Crow? Usually 5 to 15 seconds, maybe 30 seconds if it took a little bit longer. But this idea that one side of the room, they lined up and they knocked on the door, and the other person had to answer the door. And the way that they knocked and the way that they answered the door would create the character, the relationship, what the objective was, and where they were. So fascinating, the scenes that people would create based on such simple stimulus.
That's right.
Every single one of our business opportunities with people, it really comes down to how well can you visualize these stories. So I thought you gave a great example. One thing I would love to talk about a little bit more in depth is, how do you take someone that is so focused on that neocortex, the number crunching, and open them up to say, wow, this interpersonal communication stuff is really important. And this is the difference between having your numbers be just data that goes over someone's head and having something hit somebody's heart.
There you go. Well, here's the thing. What I love, especially with my neocortex-based clients, is that they're learners. They love to learn, right? And so I start usually with teaching them the neuroscience real quick. Now, I am not a neuroscientist, but I have done the research and I've talked to neuroscientists, and they've confirmed that, like, what I'm saying is true. And when they learned that it used to be left brain, right brain, that's kind of a little bit passe, but let's just use that for a second. So I'll actually show them a picture of the left brain. It's like in a cartoon, and it's black and white, and it's showing numbers and analytics, and they get the concept. And I say, it's reasonable, it's logical, and this is how your brain looks at numbers. Okay, black and white. But then the right side of the brain, it's literally colorful. There's like all these colors and images, and I joke, I make a mind movie, if you will, of the gym, the limbic system. I'm like, oh, there's music playing, people are hanging out, they're sipping Slurpees, they're having a great time. And And that's where we want you to work. That's where we're going to go over there. So they kind of get like an early version of like this storyteller's mind movie image to work with. And then when, and it's interesting because like I teach you take the chart and find the story that the chart is telling you, because the chart is talking about people usually, or maybe animals, or maybe it's the planet, like maybe they're in climate tech, and so Mother Earth is the character, right? And so when we start to take the numbers and extract those into what could be the story, they start to really warm up. And I teach them, I'm like, this is putting heart behind the chart. And it's interesting because like when I'm showing this in some of my workshops, it's funny because as soon as I show a graph and it's busy and there's tons of words on it, but beforehand I've got them, like they're paying attention to me because I'm telling stories and I'm teaching, and then I flash a graph obediently. Everyone's eyes go to the graph and you see their faces kind of go, what? They kind of start squinting, and you can see all of a sudden their limbic system gets quiet and their neocortex starts kicking in. And then I say, oh, and I'm talking, and notice how I'm talking. And it's not having anything to do with what the graph is saying, but you're trying to read and you're trying to analyze and you're trying to listen to me. But aren't I annoying right now because I'm making you read? And they all start laughing. They're like, yeah, you're getting annoying. And that's when I go, that's what you're doing in your presentations. That's what you're doing. And we don't want you to be doing that. We want you to be cognizant of your audience and their experience. And that's, again, where the actor stuff comes in, because actors only care about the audience, really, when you think about it. Yeah. They want you to flip away with them. And so, put your stress away, come into our theater, come into our improv show, enjoy it. And that is a game changer for them. They're like, oh my goodness, I've been data dumping all over my audience. No wonder they look bored. Oh my God, they're scrolling before I'm even into the second slide. And I'm like, yeah, they are. And so that's another element, is that, when we give them the framework of Crow, when we teach them how to use the senses, when we show them that the charts are really talking about a story, the charts are telling a story, you're just thinking that the chart is the book. It's not. It's not. So if you can tell the story before you show the chart, or if you don't even need to do the chart, that's the thing. You don't even have to show the chart. You can put the chart in the appendix of your presentation. It's really interesting. And especially for scientists, they get a really like, what do you mean I'm not going to show my chart?
But it puts so much time behind my data. Like, why?
Right. No, and I'm not saying you won't show the chart, but you're going to show it differently. And so that's the other thing that I want to share, is that for presenters and for people in business, you are doing presentations, but there are 3 types of decks, my friends. Okay. And I'm going to teach you real quick what they are. The first one is your internal deck. That's where your data scientists, your analysts, they're grabbing all that data. They're finding all the patterns, right? It's an internal deck that the team will be looking at, and no one in the public's going to be seeing this thing. It's okay. It doesn't have to be beautiful. It just needs to have everyone be able to see it, because they're going to be analyzing.
Yeah.
The second deck is the deck that maybe you're not there at all, but you found the stories, you've got your charts, you have your headlines, you understand how it is, and someone who receives that deck can read it and follow it. It still doesn't need to be data dumping, okay? It still needs to be clean. And then the third deck is the speaker's deck. That's the one where less is more, because we want to be listening to you. You're the brilliance. You're the human being. You're the one that's done the work, and now you're communicating that out. And that could be those vision stories. That could be those customer success stories. All of that starts coming into play. And so your slides need to be very cognizant of what the audience's experience is, right? Because we want them to be having that storyteller's mind movie. We want them to be like, oh, I totally see that. Oh my God, this is about homeless people. Oh, I feel so sad. She told that story about that homeless guy out in front of the courthouse, and he's got a dog, and now I'm worried about them. Oh my God, there are 13,000 people in King County that are like that. Oh, that's putting heart behind the chart. That's using acting skills. That's using the framework, so it's important. It's
Absolutely.
important. I want us, here's my mission. I want us to demand better presentations, both as the audience and as the presenter. I don't want a presenter to say, I bored them again. I
Oh,
know I don't want that. You're getting up every single day to do the work that you're doing. Let's make it digestible.
mhm.
You know what I mean? So
Absolutely. Yeah, you are on a mission just like myself to save audiences from boring presenters. To
we're gonna
really
do it, friend.
give them an opportunity to accept that information, make it digestible, and then meaningful, and put that heart behind the chart. I love the way you say that. That's such a beautiful expression.
Thank
One of
you.
the things I admire about you is you've been able to take so many of these different skills and simplify them in a codified way that allows somebody else to take that and then use it. You utilize Crow, you use some other, I call them story mining, but what
Mhm.
do you do typically when you're helping someone get to their story fruition? This is the
Yeah.
origin story or how they found that passion. What does that process look like for you?
Oh, that's interesting. That's a great question because it is story mining. So when I wrote the book, I did a process. So the first part is story mining. And so you were finding your stories. So when we're finding someone's why story, like or their origin story, or what I would call your story fruition, right? I
Mhm.
go all the way back to childhood, to be quite honest, because there's I like my own story. I knew I was funny at 6 and I started acting at 9, right? And then yeah, so I do that. And what you want to do is that's where my journalism part of my degree comes in. It's like we come in and we're asking questions. So we're going to start teaching them through the story mining. So when they say, well, my grandmother was one of the most important people in my upbringing. Okay, great. Describe her. What'd she look like? And they're like, well, she was really tiny. She got red hair and she never stopped talking. Oh, okay, great. All right, good. And I was in her kitchen. What did her kitchen look like? And they're like, well, it was green and small, but I go, what did it smell like? They're like, well, she always had, believe it or not, canned beets on the oven. And like, you could always smell the syrup of those canned beets. For some reason, she loved those. And what I'm doing is I'm pulling out all the senses. So here's a hot tip. When you're telling a story, always try to get food into it. Because what happens is your audience starts to smell it and taste it.
Mhm.
And now limbic system's working hard. Limbic system is now creating neurotransmitters. So oxytocin, depending on the story, it could be dopamine. I mean, this one's probably oxytocin. And so I start teaching them that. So we're interviewing them and finding all these things. And then we got the story. Like we've got the framework of the story.
Mhm.
The improv skills come in. All of my coaches, by the way, are not all of them, but most of them are from my improv troupe. They're actually
Yes.
also improvisers. And so we're so trained in how to tell a story quickly. So we take their story and then we start using it as the mind movie method on the fly. And you just see the audience and we'll say something like, I'm 6 years old and I'm sitting in my grandmother's small kitchen. I look over and I see the green tile and I can smell those beets. She's cooking those beets and she sits me down. She goes, Misty, we need to talk about something. You're like 13 years old now. And, I start telling the story. I'm not going to tell the whole story right now, but we do this and they're hearing their own origin story. And it's never been told that way before. And then we go in, so that now we're story crafting. So once we get it, then we start to craft it even further and we put it into storyboards. So that's something that I learned along my path. So if it's a mind movie, right? It has scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we literally put it onto pieces of paper so that they can literally see it and go, there you go. And the reason we use storyboards in the crafting portion is it prevents meandering. And it follows the story arc, which we also teach, which is the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell. It's a great framework. We teach it that way. And now we have a story that's been crafted professionally. They can go on, they can tell it, and then we move into performance. Then we're like, okay. And that's where the actor stuff comes back, right? So journalism, writer, actor, director. And so they start practicing their story. And to me, that's my favorite phase of it because,
So
I'll be like, let's make your grandmother a little angrier. No, or can your grandmother say that line and say it instead of you telling me what she said? Make her say it. And they're like,
Mhm.
what? I'm like,
Playing
yeah,
with dialogue is so good.
step in, step in. And so we teach people that when you're telling a story really well to create that storyteller mind movie, you're stepping in and out of being a narrator and then stepping into the scene.
Mhm.
So the narrator's moving the story, and that's in my book. It's called Advance and Expand. So we're moving the story along, but then we're stepping in to expand upon the pivotal moments of that scene in their life, right?
So good.
So, yeah. So I started off as a narrator. I'm sitting in my grandmother's kitchen, and I described it, and then my grandmother, I showed you my grandmother. I had her talk really fast, and she said, Missy, you're 13 years old. Brought my age in. Right now, I could have said I'm 13 years old and I'm sitting in my grandmother's kitchen. That could be another thing. And that's a little bit of part of the where, because when you're telling a story, and a story is always about the past, unless you're doing vision stories, it's really good to tell the audience pretty quickly how old you are in that story. And the reason being is that we're igniting the mind movie right away, because they're going to start imagining me at 13. And then very quickly, they're going to remember being 13.
Mhm.
And what does a 13-year-old care about?
For you, I mean, maybe they care about boys, they care about school, they care about all these different ways that people are perceiving them. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we all jump into 13-year-old consciousness.
Mhm.
And now we've snagged them into that time-space reality.
Perfect.
And they don't even know that this is happening. I know it. And Story Fruition coaches know it. And so what we're doing is we're pulling people into this different reality for a moment to edutain them, so that when the story's done, and for whatever the point of that story would be, the audience is like, wow. And now they're looking at this presenter or storyteller, and they've now just become magnetic.
Mm.
Right? They're not just a presenter that's going to go, well, I'm going to get through this 15 minutes and data dump all over you and leave. They're going to say, I'm going to edutain you. I've got something important to say. I've got stories that are going to back it up. I'm going to tell these stories really, really well. And I am going to blow your minds away. Or I'm going to change how you're going to think about something now differently. And when you leave, I bet you're going to remember my story a lot longer than you're going to remember any pie chart I show you.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So it really is, I think what we're doing with Story Fruition and in this type of work, you too, is that we're teaching the art, the science to the art form of storytelling in presentations.
That's such a useful skill for anybody in business. You think about how easy it is to lose an audience. Like, I've been in so many board meetings.
Board.
And that's not BOARD, where you're just sitting there and everything the presenter's saying is just in one ear and out the other, and you're just like, oh.
You want to gnaw your own arm off to get out of the meeting.
Yeah. And you just hope that goes faster, but there's no way to make it go faster. When you have a compelling story, you don't want the time to go. You want to just be there with the presenter. And that's what you do as a Story Fruition artist. I guess I want to call, or a coach. You say the coach.
Yeah,
And
I like artist.
I like artist. Art's more fun, but it really comes down to, are you giving them the equipment and the gear that they need to be able to do what they need to do, and to keep that audience with them that whole time? That's what stories do. They pull people in, they give them all of the data that they need, that significant element, and then we can do something with that data. But if you give all the data and it just hits people like a barrage of bullets or something, nothing sticks.
We've overwhelmed them. So you're absolutely right. And here's the thing. There's two things I want to say. First, I'm going to talk about, we can talk about the wonder wander effects. I want to talk about that.
Oh, yes.
I also want to talk about that it doesn't have to be a long story to create that image in their mind and for them to light up. So even if you just, the words it could be 2 words that you use, right? That creates an image in their mind that they can hold on to. because most of the stories, so this is a common question I get, is like, well, how long am I going to be telling this story? About 30 to 99 seconds. Mm-hmm. Right? They got to be, so that's where you have to be concise, right? Like, and so I have a chapter called weed whacking, where you're going to go, and at first all the stories are really long because they're playing in it. And I love that. Like, you should see some of the engineers, like they come back and it's like a novel, but I'm like, that's good. That's good. No time has been wasted here, but now we're going to weed whack it. We're going to figure out what's the best way to say that one line. Okay. What's the best way to say that where it's vibrant and it's creating an image and a feeling. Okay. So this is a whole new muscle that they're working. But here's the thing about when you're bored and when you're being barraged. I wrote this. This is called the wonder wander effect. Mm-hmm. And the wonder wander effect happens all the time. And I always joke that my coaches and I, we're like the wonder wander cops. We're trying to prevent it. And what it is that you as the speaker either say something or you show something in your deck and the audience doesn't know what it means or what to do. And so usually an easy one is that they say an acronym and they just assume that everyone knows what it means because the speaker's like, well, if I know it, you know it. And that's the curse of knowledge because they don't. Again, it's about the audience. So always before you ever say any acronym, like you don't even want to say, don't even assume like people know what ROI is. You say, if you're going to be investing and you're looking for a return on investment, the ROI that we would bring you, see, how hard was that? That was so easy to do instead of just because let's say you have someone really young coming in and they're in the room and they don't know what ROI stands for yet. They're going to go, huh? What was that? Do you know what ROI is? I don't know what that is. And now they're wandered away from listening to you. And so now they've wandered away. You're still talking. Or you flash something and now everyone's reading it and they can't listen to you anymore because they're trying to analyze and read your damn chart that you're dumping on them. There's now a hole in their consciousness of your message. Okay. Because they're going to jump back on trying to listen to you because the audience is, we're polite. We try to listen to the speaker. Right. And I always joke, it's like, they fell off the communication train and they're on the tracks now and they're running to try to catch up with you and jump back on. And meanwhile, they jump back on and they're like, okay, I'm listening again. Okay. They're doing a customer success story. Okay. This will be good. Huh? What did they? Oh, okay. I'm off again. They're off the train. And we don't want that. We don't want that. So you need to know that when, you got to define things, you got to make sure that you're using stories, but there's even other things like, this is an interesting one. Movie references. A lot of people will sometimes use a movie reference. And if your audience hasn't seen the movie, it's going to go flat on them. So I'm always really careful. I once had someone say, well, it's like taking the blue pill. And I'm like, the what? And he's like, like in The Matrix. I'm like, I haven't seen The Matrix. I'm like the only person in the world that hasn't seen The Matrix. But here's what happened to me. I was like, with Keanu Reeves. Oh, he's so cute. Oh. And then Melissa Reaves. If I married him, I'd be Melissa Reaves. That'd be cool. And I'm over here thinking about Keanu Reeves, and he's meanwhile still trying to talk about his financial strategy. And I'm out. I wandered away. That's on him.
Absolutely. You think about how simple that type of a fix can be, whether they see that reference or not. You could do like a little GIF. You could do so many different things that contextualize it first. This is something I learned as a language teacher, that if you don't contextualize exactly what it is that you're talking about, you will not be able to clearly communicate in any situation. And one of the things that Crow does is it gives you the context. And when you have the context, you can read more effectively. You can understand what is actually coming to you. And in language learning, there's this idea of making sure that things are comprehensible. Because if it's not comprehensible, that input is actually not valuable because it's just sounds, especially when it's another language. So I speak a handful of languages. I speak Spanish and Mandarin, and I taught Mandarin for years. And that is one of the things that you can think about. If you are taking a completely different language or data set and you're trying to translate it clearly to your audience, they have to have reference points that make sense. So in my framework, I talk about you hit the significant elements, and that's cutting out all the fat, kind of like what you're talking about. And then you translate it for your audience. That's very intentional word, translate, because if it's not in a framework that makes sense to them, it's not a reference that they've seen as far as a movie, it will go over their head, and then the rest of your story isn't contextualized, and they won't get it. They won't see the mind movie. They won't be able to respond to what you're talking about. And then hitting that objective is this next portion of my story framework, where you really dial in, why are we even telling this story? If the audience isn't clear on why this matters to them, if it doesn't have a point to the story, you're like, well, that was a waste.
Right. And you got up and you spent probably, days preparing for that presentation to only lose your audience.
Yep.
Because you weren't being conscientious. And you're right. And especially think about like when you're in an audience too, think about the melting pot that we are, right?
Yeah.
Like there's so many amazing, beautiful, fabulous, brilliant people that are in this world, and they don't just know English. They didn't get raised in America. They're coming here to do something else with their knowledge and culture. So we're not going to be able to nail it 100%. So don't put yourself ever in a perfectionist kind of way. But if you are even 25 to 30% more cognizant of the mix of the people in your room, you will be more successful. This is not a cookie cutter, like presentations, the way they're being done in business right now, to me is just tragic. It's tragic. And it's an epidemic. The Wonder Wander effect is an epidemic. And I think that we need to give it an antidote. And that is becoming conscious. That is becoming aware of your audience, being, like, as you said, being able to take the numbers and the context and make it relatable for most of the room. And then if you feel like I can't get the whole room, you can always just stop and say, are there any questions here? This all makes sense. I do that all the time. I pit stop, anything. And people are like, yeah, can we talk about, and now I can identify where I might have fallen off the train tracks with them. Right. Because you got to do your best, but most people are not even doing that. They're just
right.
And again, I also want to be compassionate too. Most people, when they're presenting, they hate public speaking.
Yeah.
They're terrified. And and when we talk about that, I always use, again, I'm going to use a little mime movie here. The devil and the angel on the shoulders, right? With Bugs Bunny. Remember, he had the devil and the angel, and the devil was always like, yeah, you got to do this. There's also known as the chatterbox, and the chatterbox is over there going, your presentation is so boring, and you know it, and you're data dumping all over the place. And guess what? You've got lettuce in your teeth, It's saying these things, and everyone's judging you, right? And you're like, your parents told you shouldn't be an engineer, like saying things that you're not even aware of. And then there's the coach, and the coach is the voice that I want my clients to be zeroing in on. And that's why you could say, I've prepared for this. I have found my stories. I am being conscientious to the audience when I will show the charts. I am connecting with them. And I'm owning this, and I have a right to be on this stage, and I am going to not concentrate on my chatter, but I'm going to get off of that, and I'm going to get on to my words. I'm going to be thinking about the subject. And now all of a sudden that fear becomes now fuel, right? And that's up to you as the speaker, right? And so again, storytelling has also been a really great way for those with high anxiety of public speaking to start to relax, because it's fun to tell stories.
Oh, yeah.
And it's fun to hear stories. And so I've seen so many clients that, one client turned off her camera and her microphone because she didn't want to do the presentation in front of me, because she started to physically and emotionally break down. And then she came back on, and I gave her that kind of pep talk, like, get off of yourself and onto your words, and you're going to be okay, because your presentation looks great. You're just in your own way right now. And she took deep breaths, square breathing breaths, got the oxygen in her head. So there's some physical things that we can do too. And then it worked. She started going through it. And now I have her on a testimonial. She's like, oh my God, it was like, don't even tell me to do a presentation. And then she said to me, I get to do my presentation in 2 more days. Like, she was so excited. She totally changed around, like, her whole attitude. And it was because she started realizing storytelling and data control was what she had not known about. It was the game changer for her. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Being able to help someone recognize it's not actually about them. The presentation isn't about you. As actors, as improvisers,
Yeah.
that's something that I am so grateful for, because if you have that call and response from the audience, you are able to really dial in and figure out what that feedback is. You can see, oh, I've lost them, or oh, they're with me. And you can feel that difference.
Feel it.
It's
Yeah.
so valuable. But
Yeah.
sometimes people, if they don't have those acting skills or they haven't been trained to recognize, how is the audience responding here? How am I engaging with them? Are they listening? Uh, they don't utilize engagement questions or even clarifying questions like what you're talking about, like tying back to make sure that this information made sense. You really can lose so many audiences so fast. And I had this little point I wanted to make really quick.
Yeah.
Think about, like, if someone had a group of 100 people, because that makes math really easy,
Mhm.
and you have them with them right at the beginning, but then because you didn't do your best at putting your story together, you didn't do your best at the presentation, those 15 minutes that you had now was wasted because you didn't make an impact. Nothing happened by the end of the presentation. That's not just 15 minutes. That's 1,500 minutes that you wasted, because that's
Mhm.
15 minutes for every single person in the audience. And
Oh,
that's the impact that you think about of not being able to help somebody, not
yeah.
being able to reach an audience, is every single person in that audience, they invested their heartbeats with you.
Oh.
And if you didn't honor that by saying, you know what, I'm fully prepared, I'm going to do my very best in this moment to give and to serve them, we miss that intimate connection they can only have in that one-on-one or that one-to-many setting in person or even virtually.
Mhm.
It's so impactful, so important. So, Melissa, you were in the right place, doing the right thing. I'm so grateful for you. This is so exciting. Uh,
Oh, that was beautiful, by the way, though, because you're really talking about human connection. And that's really, it has a place in business.
yeah.
So the tagline of my book is the storyteller's mind movie. Become an emotionally connected leader through the power of your storytelling skills.
Mm,
Right. And so that's those are the people that are going to be like, I know that I'm supposed to connect. I want to connect. And that's the game changer in your own career, right? And just because everyone else is data dumping in presentations doesn't mean it's right.
right.
Be the standout. Be the standout. Be the one that where people are like, oh, Brigham's going to give a presentation today. You're going, right? Not, oh God, here comes Steve. Okay. All white slides, graphs, numbers, dumps, blah, nothing. It's up to you.
So
It's up
true.
to
I
you.
just had Steve pick that picture of him, the guy that he's like, here, I was able to cram everything on only 2 slides. And you're like, oh
Oh
no, you have an
God.
hour presentation with 2 slides. Oh my gosh. And you just get ready for the 80 clicks, and then and you just see all the
Right.
data.
And then the audience, what are they doing? Scrolling.
And like,
But
I'm taking a picture so I don't miss anything, and I don't have
yeah,
to anymore.
yeah. Hey, honey, did you get the dog food we needed tonight? Oh, yeah, that's a great point, Steve. But here's what's something that just happened just now, Brigham, is I just said Steve, and
Mhm.
then you said, you see the guy, and he's got slides. You created your own storyteller mind movie. All I had to do is say, and then Steve walks in.
Yeah.
And the way I said it and the way I made the voice, that's what improvisers know, is
Yeah.
that the audience is, and you want to give credit to your audience, is
Mhm.
that they are creating their own stories with you. So it's either going to be bland or they're going to start creating it with themselves. And so that's what you just did. You
Absolutely.
created Steve. And so listeners of Leveling It Up out there, what happened with you?
Mm.
Start paying attention when you're in a presentation and someone says something. Pay attention to what's going on in your own imagination because you are writing a story with them. It's either bland or it's completely a magic carpet ride because the speaker's so good. All right. And
Yes.
so but that's improv training too. So I think, should we just make a plug that everyone
Everyone, yes.
take an improv
Totally do
class?
improv training.
It will push your boundaries. It will be first off the couple hours of the week that you will look forward to after you stop throwing up in the bathroom because you're scared of it. There's nothing to be scared of. Right now, you
Mm.
and I have been having a conversation. Guess what? That's improv.
It's true. One of the things that I'm going to plug improv even more is we don't fall to the rules of the game. We fall to the frameworks that we've been taught. We fall to the ways that we've been able to recognize not just rules, but patterns. Anytime you do a short form or a long form improv game, there are established ways that you'll be able to say, oh, here's how I set the intention for where I'm going with this. Here's how I create repetition. And then here's the variation. And that's where a punchline comes. Those simple skills you can use in any presentation. You can use in any conversation. And as you develop them, it becomes second nature. We fall to the frameworks that we have. So you have a great framework like what Melissa's talking about. You have a framework that I share on this all the time with that story framework. Anytime you have these frameworks, it is a tool, almost like an arrow in your quiver. And you can say, oh, this is the time I can use that. Perfect. And we fall to those frameworks.
Well, you've been working that muscle. You've been working that muscle, and that's really, really key. Yeah, I concur. So everyone take an improv class and don't be afraid of it. Embrace it, because you will change. Because I've had clients, I've sent so many clients and just friends in business, and they're taking classes. And I asked them recently, I said, what are you getting from it now that you've taken improv? And all of them said, I'm a better listener. I'm listening better. And so the same thing about storytelling. Even if it's not a business presentation, you just want to get better at your own storytelling, because guess what? You're a walking storybook and you're telling stories all day long. You're going to learn to teach better. Listen to really good storytellers, right? Listen to NPR. Go to the Moth shows. There's tons of podcasts that are only dedicated to storytelling, right? Listen to it. Pay attention to what's going on in your imagination. Be cognizant of it. Scientists out there, be like what Steve did, or what happened with Steve in your mind, right? Black and white. You saw all the thing. You saw him clicking. All I said was, and then Steve walks into the room, and you lit up, all on your own,
because we created a character.
Yeah,
and a part of that is in your inflection, in your tonality, in your physiology, how you responded to that. It is all acting skills. All that interpersonal communication and everything that you do to relive that story visually, like auditorily, kinesthetically. And I like the way you said, like even bring your stomach into it and letting people taste things, all of these different sensations. That's how we take something from being bland data that doesn't actually mean something to having it impact us, hit our heart and be like, wow, that left a ripple. I feel it. And you think about this. This is just going, since we're doing some cognitive things with memory. One of my favorite things is you see, link, and then go. This is in any time you're doing organization of your memory. See, link, and go. I heard this first from someone I had on my podcast. It's a different, simple framework that you can think about. Anytime you see something and you see in all of the different ways that it is, and you link it to your own references, and then you go and use it. It's in the using of that experience that it becomes real. I was like, wow, that's how you can organize any thought, any idea, any experience, and you can draw on that. And if you don't do the work to make that story really vivid, then it might just be for you. But if you can make that extremely vivid for other people, they can see it, you respond to it, then they can start to have that mind movie play in their heads as well.
That's right. Beautiful. That's right. And now you have connection. Now you own the room. It's interesting. You were talking about the census thing.
Yeah.
I have a client who's doing an investor pitch, and she's going to be like Skylight. It's Skylight Social. It's going to be huge. Okay. It's going to be huge. And she was telling some history stories, right? Like where her story fruition was going. And she says, and then one day I was scrolling, I was sipping my coffee, and Mark Cuban said that he was looking for someone to present something on the app platform. And I told her, I'm like, make sure you get the coffee in there. Because everyone will be tasting coffee. It's very, very, very subtle. And she did. And so she's using all these things. And this is in an investor deck. High stakes, storytelling, sensory, context, connection, all of it. It's all happening. Happening.
Yeah. And all this comes down to everything that you've ever experienced in life is just a piece of data that you can start to bring in. And build off of. Some people think this is something I remember very vividly in my first acting one classes. They're like, I don't have any experience telling stories, or I'm not good at improv. And that's a really crappy story. If your stories are not serving you, find a story that does. Like,
Right.
oh, let me find data that does serve me, that will prove that I am competent in X, Y, or Z situation.
Right.
Because if you look for it, you'll be able to find it. Our brains are amazing that way. They sort through data so fast. They'll say, that's the file that lets me know that I can be adaptable in different situations. As you create that data file, you make it like beefy, then you can have more confidence because you're more competent. Because that's all that confidence actually is how competent you are.
Yeah. And practice. It's interesting that you're using that as data too. So engineering people out there, right? They really respond to that. So when I was saying, like, I'll just go back to, age, right? That's data.
Yeah.
Okay. Where you're standing is the place. That is data. The person coming in is also a piece of data, and now, but we're telling it differently. Telling it in a narrative that human beings respond to because we love stories. Yes. We've been telling stories for the millennia, that's what we've been doing. So it's exciting. Storytelling presentations. We've got to do them. Let's do them better.
Do them better. Done. Hashtag do presentations better.
And if you can't do it, call one of us. We'll help you. Yeah. We have quite the framework, and there's lots of ways that, you can get a hold of at least the mind movie method, the storyteller's mind movie method, because I've got the books, I've got videos, I've got an audiobook. You listen to the audiobook.
I listen to the audiobook because that's the way that I like to process information the most efficiently. And you read it very beautifully. Thank you so much for that. Because some people are very boring on audiobooks, believe it or not. It's almost like they've never taken acting classes or improvisational theater.
Yeah, people didn't think I was really reading it. They were like, you were just talking in the microphone. I'm like, no, I was reading my book. But we also have 16 executives telling stories. So it almost has like a podcast feel to it.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted. I was like, so I always recommend get the book and the audio, quite honestly, because they'll reinforce each other. Right? Because the book has like the framework of the story arc. It has pictures of slides that are data dumping. That's kind of hard to do on the audio book. Yeah. And there was times I was like, oh my gosh, I have to explain the arc. Okay. But if you put them together, then, I think it's important that you've got the visual and then you've got the audio because it's storytelling. And so storytelling is then done by, like I said, 16 executives are sharing stories as examples of whatever we're going on. So if we're talking about time travel, we have a story about time travel. If we are using time travel, etc. So I wanted it to be fun to listen to.
Absolutely. And it was fun to listen to. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think I already left a review on it. So 5 stars for sure.
Bless you. Thank you.
I appreciate you. And this has been such a wonderful experience. Guys, go connect more with Melissa. She's phenomenal. I'm excited to. I haven't gotten the physical book yet, so I need to go do that. So that's a good
physical book. And don't forget, I have my AI talking book coming too.
Oh, yes. That's so exciting. Tell us a little bit about what that's coming up in a couple months. You said this new tool is going to be like a little coach in your pocket. So let's talk about that for a moment.
Yes. So I'm working with Diya Reads, DIYA Reads, and it is essentially my book. Trained. So it's trained in my book. It's trained in my voice, and it is trained in the storyteller's mind movie method. And so clients can go up and talk into the book and say, here's a story that I'm working on. And you will hear me coaching you. I'll right away be like, well, let's talk about how long of a time frame you have. What's your audience like? So it's gathering that information. And then you can start telling your story and it will stop and coach you all the way through. And it is my voice, which is awesome. And it is my method, which is great. But we are using my avatar, Missy.
I like it. This is the younger version, the little kid version, but I think that's so fun.
So Missy's on demand. So Missy can actually help you formulate your stories. I've been watching people use it in front of me, and it's mind-blowing. It's hilarious, and it's really effective because my goal is I want to reach millions of people. I want millions of people across the globe to be able to use this. And with technology these days, Missy can speak any language,
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's weird, but it's great. And so this is for people who are like, look, I'm not going to be able to work with Story Fruition directly, but I can do this any point in time and I want to. There you go. There you go. So that's coming out in the next probably month. We're still in beta and working on it, but it's going to be the talking book version.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
As you guys are recognizing all these different tools, I just want to encourage you to don't give up on things that are new and difficult, especially with technology. That's something that it's so easy to be like, oh, do I need that? I don't know. Just embrace it. And when you have something new, say, wow, this is something that will serve a need. And if it does, and it means something, you'll make it meaningful to you by using it. Just like you're learning any language, there is a time where you have to have a little bit of ambiguity in what it looks like, what that means. And then eventually that gap gets smaller and smaller, and then you understand.
Right.
Take time to contextualize it. Take time to make sure this is useful for you. You don't know if you don't actually use it. So I'm excited to hear your tool a little bit more when that comes out in July. I'm happy to be on your podcast. We can talk a little bit more about it. Maybe even source one of my stories. But, let's play with this.
I sent it to you. So you have
I'll play with it a little bit. I'll give you some
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Melissa. It's been such a wonderful time connecting with you. And guys, as I always say at the end of my podcast, keep leveling up your life. Find those things that you are passionate about, the experiences that you're having, and continue to find ways that you can build and get better every single day. Because as you level up your life, you give permission to other people to level up theirs. So have a great rest of your day, and God bless. Talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Hit this right here. And once again, Melissa, thank you so much for your time.